The following podcast is a Dear Media production.
Welcome back to the Real Stuff podcast. Today we have an audience caller who we're going to be calling Laura, although that's not her real name. She did request to remain anonymous, both visually and by her name. And she wrote in to tell us about her husband, who, in her own words, is a sex addict. Today's conversation is multi-layered. We cover everything, including all the details about what happened during their engaged life, leading up all the way through their marriage, exactly what he disclosed to her in their joint therapy session, all the way to the lie detector test that she made him take. This conversation is broad, it's intense, it's deeply personal, and it's probably the most taboo topic that we've discussed on this show to date. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that nobody in your life has spoken to you about this, even if it's something that they or their partner are going through. Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I know that part of why Laura wrote in is to break this stigma and to remind even just one listener out there who might be dealing with this at home that you are not alone. We really dive into the taboo around sex addiction and tie it back to something like an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction or a gambling addiction, and sort of suss out how those are similar and how they're different and how society views them differently, but how they might actually be similar internally. This is just the type of story that I love hearing from audience callers about because it's personally something that is so foreign for me. I've never had a friend confront me and share this with me. Even if there is someone in my life who's going through this, I don't know about it. And I know there's going to be a listener who hears this episode and is grateful for it, even if they don't comment, even if they don't write in to thank us. I know this is going to hit someone and help someone. So thank you to Laura for writing in. And as a reminder, if you have a story to tell that you want to put on blast for the world, whether it's anonymously or using your face and name, go to luciefink.com/apply and send us an application. We have hundreds of incredible stories sitting in there, and we are sifting through them every day, pulling out the most taboo and the most intense ones to share with you. We just love reading them. It means the world to me that you guys feel comfortable opening up to us. And if I could, I would bring every single one of you on the show. So let's get to it today with our audience caller, Laura. Hi, Laura. First of all, thank you so much for writing to me and wanting to come on. Let's just give a top level background of what you wrote into me about.
Sure, yeah. So I wrote in because my husband has a sexual addiction. It's been very isolating just discovering this and going through this and not really being able to connect and talk with other people about this because it's so private. As I met other women through support groups, I feel like this is something that men and women both can struggle with, and their partners may have this problem and they may feel isolated as well and not have anyone else to really talk to, or, you know, they may just feel so alone. And so I really wanted to reach out to you just to be able to share my story and maybe give some encouragement to someone else that's going through this.
How old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, and how old's your husband?
He's 33.
All right, so can you take us back to the start of your relationship and tell us how long you guys have been together?
Sure, yes. We started dating back in 2018. We met online. You know, it was one of those things. I really wasn't sure what I was looking for. Neither was he. We had just gotten out of long-term relationships. And when I met him, I just fell like head over heels for him pretty much instantly. Like I knew so quickly that he was such a special person. And so we were pretty much exclusive after that. We took a while to get married. We dated for about 5 years and we got married in 2023.
What did you love about him when you first met him?
I loved, can I say everything? I loved everything.
You can.
I loved his kindness towards other people. He has such a kind heart towards other people, towards animals especially too. Is intelligent and very dedicated and hardworking. He really values his family. He's creative. He doesn't fit inside of a box. Like you would see him and you would see what he does for work and you would think, okay, he's this way, but he's involved in sports and he likes to do creative things. And I just loved that about him. Like, he doesn't quite fit in one particular mold.
Did you say in your letter to me or when you were talking to my producer before this call, did you say something about your relationship feeling like a fairy tale before all of this happened?
Yes, it did. It really did. I like to think of him as my knight in shining armor. Like, he helped me get through a really difficult time with my ex before this relationship. My ex he'd been doing some dangerous things and I wasn't safe. And so my husband, he helped me, he protected me, he helped me through like court cases, he helped me find a place to live, and then besides that, it was just our love for each other. It was unlike anything I'd ever felt with anyone before.
So how quickly after you guys met online did you start intensely dating, and then when did you get married?
So we met in 2018 and we were pretty much exclusive right off the bat, but we didn't really put a label on it. It took a little while for us to actually be boyfriend and girlfriend officially. So maybe 5 months later. And then we dated for a while, about 5 years. And he proposed in 2022 and we got married in 2023.
Okay, so now you've been married about 2 years, but let's go back to a little bit before today. When in this relationship did you start to realize that there were some signs of something going on?
Yeah. It was around 2021.
So before the wedding.
It was before the wedding, and I didn't know the extent of everything, but I had found on his phone, like, I'm not the type of person that's going to be, nosy and look at someone's devices or their phone, but there was one day when he was gone, he was doing something, but his phone was at home. And there was just this like nagging thing, like in the back of my head saying, you should look at this, you should check this. And I tried to like avoid it and push it to the side because I had no reason to suspect anything, but it wouldn't go away. So I looked and I saw messages between him and a few other women on his phone. And it like shocked me because we had been exclusive for so long at that point.
Was this when you were engaged to be married?
This was before that,
Okay.
actually. So we weren't engaged, we were just dating, but I found these messages and I asked him about it. I confronted him and he was like, oh, well, it's nothing. It's no big deal. Like, these are just like women that I knew like in college and we keep in touch professionally or whatever.
And by the way, are these names popping up in his phone with names, or is it just anonymous numbers?
They were names, but it was through Facebook, like Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
It wasn't like text messages or anything like that. It was all through Facebook.
And when you saw these messages, what was the nature of what they were talking about?
They were talking about like meeting up, like for coffee or for dinner or something. I wasn't exactly sure, but it was enough to make me feel like, oh, this is inappropriate, whatever this is. Like, I'm very uncomfortable.
And did you click over to any of the profiles of these women?
I did. And they weren't people I recognized. I would have no clue who they were. So yeah, I didn't know what to do really besides talk to him. I called him. I said he had to get home right away. And I showed him the messages and I was like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? I think maybe because he was caught so off guard and in what I now know to be like active addiction, he just, completely denied it and made me feel like it was nothing, like not a big deal. So I doubted myself. I was like, is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? Like, I don't know.
And at that point, had anything happened with him and those other women?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
No. Time goes on, and this is maybe 6 months later. I'm asleep. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and he wasn't in bed yet. Often he would go to bed after I would. So I woke up. It was around 11 o'clock. I needed to get water. So I go out of our bedroom, and I'm walking by our office, and the door is closed, but the light is on. And I heard him talking, but I couldn't really hear anything. And so I just thought he was maybe talking to someone or working because he would work really late into the night a lot of the time. So I kind of stood there by the door for a minute trying to hear what he was saying. And I like pressed my ear up to the door to try to hear better. And I could hear a woman's voice on the phone. It was on a speaker. And then I heard him talking to her. I don't know. I don't remember everything they said, but it was something along the lines of, "You don't look like old to me," or something like that. That's all I remember. I think I I think I just kind of like blacked out, but I knew then that he was talking with someone over the phone.
Did you alert him?
Oh, I did. I tried to like open the door and make myself known. I heard him tell her that that was our cat making the noise. Like our cat was trying to get in the door.
Wow.
And then I became like livid. I was so mad. And I told him through the door that I heard everything and that he needed to like stop and I needed to talk to him. It took a couple minutes, but like I heard it was silent. And then he opened the door and that was the first time that I knew, okay, like there's like infidelity or cheating or there's something weird going on here. But I didn't know like the full extent of it really.
So what did he say when he opened that door?
He opened the door and I'm pretty sure I just started crying, like I broke down and I told him he had a problem. I asked who the person was and he was like it's no one, like it's just this person that I found online that I was talking to, and I basically said like there's something wrong with you. Like I can't do this. Like you need to pack up your stuff and you need to leave for the night and figure this out because I don't know what's happening and I can't have you here right now.
So I just want to backtrack a tiny bit on the topic of addiction, and
Mhm.
specifically in the case of sex addiction. It is never the partner's fault in any way. So I don't want this question to insinuate at all that this should have any bearing on what he did. But can you sort of walk us through what your sexual relationship was like with him while the two of you were together? Were you guys sexually active? Were you very physical with one another? Or were you guys kind of distant at this time?
Um, at the beginning, we were sexually active, and then within a year or two, things started to dwindle until eventually there was just pretty much nothing. And we were still intimate, like we would kiss or we would hug or cuddle on the couch or whatever, but there was never that sexual intimacy between us. And now looking back, I think it's because things were happening or he was acting out in ways where he either didn't want to put me at risk or he just had no desire anymore for those things because he was getting it other ways.
And what about you? Were you content with this sort of platonic situation?
Hmm. No, no, I wasn't because I knew that there was like something wrong, but I don't know why I didn't push him on it. I just thought, well, I'm tired all the time. Like I'm tired from working. Maybe he's tired too. Like we both have really busy lives. Like it's okay. We're fine. And looking back, that should have been a sign, but for me it just never crossed my mind.
When someone hears about a friend who has a boyfriend who there's any sort of malintention or they come across texting from another woman, or in this case, hear their partner in a room talking to someone else, and maybe there's no physical cheating yet that they know of, but there's something going on. I feel the general perception would be obviously just dump him, leave the relationship, it's over. You hinted a little bit at some past relationship trauma, and everything has more depth to it than what you see on the surface. Can you sort of describe to us what you think it is that throughout all of these initial early red flags kept you from just closing the door and leaving?
I knew deep down that he was a good person. And at the beginning, I wasn't sure. Like, I doubted myself and what I knew to be true. And I didn't think that it was actually legit. Like, the things that I was seeing and hearing, like, I doubted myself and my own reality. And so I think in the beginning, that's kind of why I continued to stay. Like, I had friends that were telling me, maybe you should distance yourself or whatever. But I just thought, he's a good person. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, so I'm just going to stick with it and see what happens. And then after this other time, when I had heard that through the door, I'm a spiritual person. And so I was really debating. I was really debating on staying or leaving. And I came across this blog from this woman as I was just thinking and reflecting. And she wrote this beautiful article about how her husband had cheated on her at one point. Basically, it was like, because God forgives us, we don't have to live with the person and accept what they did, but we have to forgive them. That's what we should do. And I don't know, it struck a chord in me. Just because I forgive him, of course, it didn't mean that I had to stay, but I wanted to have that forgiveness. And so as I worked through forgiving him for that, I was just reflecting on all of his good characteristics and all of the good things that I saw over time. And with the promises of him, fixing whatever this was and hopefully going to therapy, that was enough to keep me going in the relationship. I thought maybe we could fix it together.
What's your religious background?
I'm a Christian, but non-denominational. I've been to church throughout my life. Going through this has definitely strengthened that relationship with God for sure.
Yeah, I heard you say God and that learning that you took away from the blog. From this moment when you told him to pack his bags, did he leave? Did he actually walk out of the house that night, or did he crawl into bed later?
He slept on the couch. And then the next morning, he had all of his things packed up to go visit one of his family members that was in a nearby city. And so I think he stayed with that family member for the night and came back the next day. So it was only a day that he was gone.
How do you go from that night and whatever you discovered there to then getting engaged?
Oh, yeah. Time.
How much time was between those two things?
It was over a year. And in between that time, I had seen a lot of growth in him. He had been more forthcoming and with telling me that he was struggling with pornography.
Tell us about the first time he came to you and opened up about there being any sort of problem.
Yeah. So he came home. We had this heart to heart. And I said, listen, I need to know what's going on and whatever it is, we need to make sure you're getting help for it. And at that time, he told me.
Can I just ask, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm trying to discern how you had such a deep knowing that there was something to do with addiction going on versus just a cheating man. Because I think a lot of people are cheated on, or their partner is texting someone else, or actually they go out and have a one-night stand with someone else. And when they come home, they might not have that empathy of let's talk about what's going on. I think you need help. They're rather just fuck you, I'm out. So how did you have that lens to not just shut him out, but to know that there was something deeper?
I don't know. I didn't know that it was addiction at the time. I wasn't sure how deep or how involved he was with other people yet. So I don't know if I knew that it was addiction. I know it sounds so crazy, but I loved him and I love the person that he was outside of this. That's what made me just want to sit down and talk and hear from him, because I felt like I couldn't walk away until I knew more, until I knew what was actually going on, if there was anything else or if this was it.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you loved him so much and wanted so badly for it to be a quote fixable problem.
Yeah. And at that point too, I didn't know if anything physical had happened. And according to him now, now as he went back and recounted everything, nothing physical had happened yet. So he had been honest in saying that he hadn't been physical with anyone. So I think that maybe made it better or easier for me to kind of move through.
So you sit down with him and he opens up that he has a pornography addiction. From there, what happens?
So from there, I had told him that I wanted to start counseling, and I had already been seeing someone at the time just for unrelated reasons. And so I invited him to come with me. While we were there, we were working through some things, not in great detail though. And I don't think it was super effective because this therapist wasn't as experienced with these types of issues. But as we were going through this, maybe a month or two later, his dad passed away. And I almost feel like at that point we were focused on helping him get through that loss and his family get through that loss. And now that I'm like actually thinking about it, like going back and thinking about it, I think that almost distracted me from like the issues that were going on. Like I still knew that things were there, but I saw him being so consumed with his grief, struggling to get through like this work stuff that was happening. I stopped worrying about it. Like I just wasn't thinking about it as much.
As this is happening and you guys are in counseling and you're working through it, did you tell anyone in your life, friends, family members, what you were going through?
I did. I had a couple friends that I was talking to at the time, and they were really supportive. They weren't telling me one way or another really what to do. They were looking out for my best interest and wanted me to be careful. But at the end of the day, they loved him too, because they knew him. They were friends with him through me. So they wanted the best for him, but they wanted the best for me as well. And so they would have supported me with anything I decided to do.
Now take us through the story of that whole timeline from that first time you talked to him all the way through this full disclosure.
Okay. So after finding out about his pornography addiction, about a year later, we were engaged. And then a year later, we were married. At that time, around the time we were married, maybe a little bit before that, he had started therapy with it's called a CSAT, but it is a counselor that works with people with sexual addictions. And so I knew he was seeing this person, and the whole time I just thought, okay, this is for pornography. He had been working with him, seeing him at least twice a month. And then about a year into seeing this counselor, I was invited to go to a session. And they told me, okay, like he said, we're working with your husband right now, but you need a counselor too. You need someone that is going to help you through this and support you, who can work with us, and we can be like a team for the two of you.
And just to interrupt here, after the first discussion about the porn addiction, at the point at which you get engaged to him, did you feel like he was over it, he worked through it, it was done, or were there still things happening?
I really thought things were under control, or else I would not have moved forward with getting engaged. No.
Got it. Okay, so
Yeah.
you thought it was under control, which leads to the engagement and marriage. And
Yes.
at this time, he's in counseling, but just to be clear, you think he's just in counseling, continuing doing therapy for the porn addiction.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Continue from here.
So I had my own counselor, and really at the time, I just thought it was so dumb. I was like, I don't want to have my own counselor. I don't need this. Like, I'm okay. This is just something for him to work on, and I'll be fine. But I continued to see her up until this past November. In November, we had scheduled a therapeutic disclosure, which is where you sit down in a room, both of your counselors are there, and the addicted partner has this letter that they've written to you, and they read through like everything, all of the like transgressions or just struggles that they have been going through from the time that, maybe when they were a child, when this began, or for the duration of your relationship. And they go into incredible detail about partners, any kind of service that they've used, money that was spent, lies that they told. It's supposed to be this very honest unveiling of the truth. That way, everything's out on the table.
So you show up to this disclosure thinking that this whole time he's just been working through a pornography addiction, but you show up with your own representation and he has his own. And does he read you a letter or give it to you to read?
He read me the letter, and yes, I just thought it was for the pornography addiction. And when he started reading, I was like, okay, yes, I know this, this is fine. And then he got to a part in the letter where he mentioned that he had slept with someone else. And I just felt like part of me like crack. And then he continued to read, and there was another crack and another crack. And it was all of this information that I had no clue about, all of these things that had happened. And I like completely broke into a million pieces.
First of all, I am so, so sorry to hear that you had to go through this. If you don't mind sharing, what was the nature of some of these encounters and what was the amount of money that he had spent on services and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Anywhere from chat rooms, meeting up with people in person, to have sexual encounters, paying for sex. Just I'm trying to think. It was so traumatic. A lot of it is almost like a blur. I just know that this was happening when he was away, out of town, or on like a work trip, or when he was out of town doing some sort of like hobby. I found out that he had been on dating sites and was like meeting up with people on there or connecting with people, like swiping through. He had spent money. Thankfully, it was not devastating. I've heard horror stories about people just going into like bankruptcy because of this, but it was maybe a couple of $1,000s that he had spent over the course of all of this. And I found out that the physical cheating started when we were engaged. So after we were engaged and after we were married.
Describing it as being cracked and then cracked again. I mean, it's really heart-wrenching, especially now being in the situation where you're married now. And it's like you look back at this time that was a joyous time and your wedding and your engagement, and now you're finding out all these things that were actually happening. And it's just got to be really a mind fuck.
Absolutely. Yes. It just heartbreaking.
He's reading you this letter, and is he in the letter providing, not that there is always a reason, but is he giving you information about what he suspects is the cause of this addiction, or is there anything in his life that would lead him to become a person that's dealing with sex addiction?
At this point in the letter, he had not revealed anything like that, but over time, I came to find out that it was due to events in his childhood, whether that be emotional neglect or emotional abuse. He looked for comfort through pornography. And when he would watch pornography, he would feel comforted by it, and it would help him to help to subside those feelings of loneliness and sadness and grief.
I feel sex addiction is such a taboo topic partially because, well, firstly, because it's about sex. And that's just something that people don't talk about as often as they talk about drugs or drinking or gambling or whatever else you could be addicted to. But secondarily, having a sex addiction, I don't know enough about the addiction community to know if the way people are treating a quote sex addict should be in line with the way you would treat someone who says, I'm an alcoholic or I have a gambling addiction. If you have a friend that were to come forward and tell you about any of those other types of addictions, I feel like the immediate response is, you need help, you need support, we're all here for you. Versus sex addiction sounds like the type of thing that is so misunderstood that the immediate reaction of people is obviously just leave the person, dump them, drop them, you're better off without them. But it is interesting when you add in the layer of the fact that this is actually an addiction, just like an alcohol addiction. Would you leave a partner because they were an alcoholic? I mean, maybe some people would, but I think some people's mindset on it would be, I'm in this marriage with you, I signed up for this with you, so I'm here to help you through your behaviors and your problems, and this one happens to be like a stab in the back to me and against all relationship norms and is just generally frowned upon in society, but it's still an addiction. It's still a quote disease in some way.
Knowing people who have gone through addiction to alcohol or to drugs, you want to get them that help. And it is one of those things where, it's like it's a compassionate response. Like anyone could become addicted to these things, right? And with sex addiction, it was hard, and it's still hard for me sometimes because there is such a stigma around it. It is the same because sex addiction is an addiction, just like alcoholism or being addicted to drugs. It's a change that happens in your brain, but because it is stigmatized and because it can manifest in so many harmful ways, to me, it was and still is scary. I still think it's a scary thing, and I'm still struggling with, I don't know, relating it, I guess, to other addictions.
I know some people within the addiction community don't like to actually use the word sex addict, or they don't like to call someone an alcoholic or identify them as that behavior, so that they could kind of separate the identity of having that addiction with who they are as a person. But when you wrote to me, you did write, "My husband is a sex addict."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious your thoughts on that linguistically.
That's a really good point. I don't think I've actually thought about it until now when you brought it up, but that makes sense. There's so much more to him and to a person than their addiction. Like, it can easily take over their lives, but you're right. Like you said, like, that's not, I don't think that's the person at their core. And so maybe I would rephrase that as a person with a sexual addiction.
The way I have heard it is a person dealing with sex
Oh,
addiction,
yes.
kind of the same way you're dealing with any other illness.
Yeah.
So, what was it like in this therapeutic disclosure process? You're sitting in the room, you read the letter. How did you respond initially?
Initially, it was just uncontrollable sobs. Like, we had to take a break because he was reading his letter, and I couldn't listen anymore. Like, I couldn't handle any more information. And so I was crying. My therapist recommended we take a break. They left the room, and it was just me and my therapist in the room. And she helped me to calm down. And when I was ready, they came back in and continued to share. I feel like by the time everything was said and everything was over, I was anxious. I was incredibly heartbroken, but I was also almost numb, like in disbelief. Like, I couldn't believe, like, this is the stuff that happens in movies and to like people that are celebrities. Like, this doesn't happen to everyday regular people. So it was a shock.
Wow. It really just sounds like a devastating moment. And knowing that you guys have therapy to do and you have things to keep talking about, after this initial conversation, did the two of you go back home together?
No. Originally, I thought we were. I had this whole plan. I'm like, well, he's just going to share a little bit and we're going to have this whole day together. No. He went his own separate way, just was by himself for a little bit. And then I went home. I came home and it was up to me. I was in control and I was supposed to tell him if I wanted him to come home at all or if he should go somewhere else. And so I just spent pretty much the rest of that day just by myself alone.
Sometimes I feel like in my life, a situation will be unfolding, and in my head, I'm already projecting what's going to happen from this. What am I going to have to do now that I've just witnessed what's happening? And in this case, I'm just envisioning you sitting there while you're listening to him read, starting to spiral, thinking, I'm going to have to leave now. Like, this is going to have to be the end of it. Is that what you were thinking? Were you just envisioning divorce proceedings and it's over? Or the whole time were you really damaged by this, but really not thinking about ending the relationship?
It, I think, was just too much of a shock for me to think too far ahead. I did at that time ask his counselor because they weren't going to do the disclosure unless he was a certain point in his recovery, right? So I asked his counselor, how he was doing and where he was at. And his counselor told me that he had been sober for at least 4 months, abstaining from everything. And that's why we did this. And so he was like, you get the ultimate say of what to do, but like, just know he's like on a good path to recovery.
It's interesting that they use the word sober.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the polygraph tests?
Oh, yes. So the reason why we did a polygraph, I probably would have done it anyway. He was 4 months sober, right? When we did this disclosure. And it was later after the disclosure that he told me he withheld information and he hadn't been sober the 4 months. And it was just a week before he had a sexual encounter with someone, just a week before disclosure. And he didn't want to tell his counselor because he was afraid that they would postpone this disclosure. And he knew like telling me was the only way that he was going to stay sober through this. Like, I had to know. or else it would just continue to be like this secretive thing. And so he came clean and was honest about that. But then, of course, like, I couldn't believe anything that he said. I'm like, if you're going to lie in front of your therapist, you're going to lie to me in this setting where you're supposed to be honest about everything and you withheld information. Like, we need to have a polygraph test so I know that you're being honest now and that everything you told me is true.
Where do you even get a polygraph test done?
My counselor, I guess it's a common thing that people can ask for, but my counselor recommended this person who was a former police officer who now only does polygraph tests. Like, that's his business. So he knows what to look for. Like, he is an expert in this. And so we went to him. It was incredibly traumatic, and he passed and everything was fine. But like, I'm sitting there in the waiting room, like, dying on the inside. Like, I'm sweating through my clothes, like, because I know, like, if it comes back as inconclusive or that he lied, I'm out. Like, there's no hope. I'm just done.
What actually happens there? They take him into a room. I mean, I'm envisioning the movies. Like, they put something on his hands and then they have him read his letter, or is it that they ask him questions based on the letter?
They asked him questions based on the letter that I developed with the person running the polygraph test. And so they have to be these yes or no questions. And I was able to ask 4 questions.
4 questions only?
Yep, just 4.
And so he answered all 4 of them, yes, no, exactly how you wanted him to.
Yes. And I thought it would be a relief, but it wasn't. Like, because, people, he's smart. My husband is a smart man. And if he wanted to convince himself that he was telling the truth and then take that, like, I'm sure he could have convinced himself and then passed. So
you didn't even really think the results of it had any weight?
Not really. I was like, well, okay, I guess this is a good thing that, like, he passed, but it doesn't really matter. Like, it could have been fake.
Do you remember those 4 questions?
I can remember maybe one of them. One of them was, it was something along the lines of, is everything that you disclosed to me in your letter, like, the truth, or is that everything in its entirety? Like, is there anything that you've left out? Like, something like that.
Right. Wow. Okay. So he passes the test. Then what?
Then we go home. For the longest time, like, we were not sleeping in the same room. And even before this, we really weren't, because he always just said, he preferred to sleep on the couch or in, like, the guest bedroom or whatever. And he would always go to bed later than me. So, like, we were sleeping in separate beds anyway. And I made a point. I was like, I want you to be at home with me so I can keep an eye on you. Like, I know what you're doing, but we're not going to sleep in the same, like, bed or anything. So we go home. After a night of sleep, we go through all of his technology. I have to change passwords to everything. I have to box up our computer and give it to a friend. I have to have access to his phone, and all of our apps now, financial apps, have to be, like, they're already in my name, but, like, I need to have the alert set up so I know when money is being spent. So it was a big process of just organizing everything.
I want to jump in here with a question that I probably should have asked you in the beginning. Do you guys have kids?
We don't have kids. That made this a lot easier.
And do you want to have kids?
Yes, I do.
With him?
Yes, I do.
Back to the religion question. Is divorce kind of, like, out of the question to you because of religious reasons?
No, I would get divorced, like, from him if, I don't know, if this had continued, if he wasn't showing progress towards healing, we would be getting a divorce.
If anyone just heard a cat purr, that's because a cat just walked past the screen. That's the cat that he blamed the door on.
Yes.
That poor cat. Just to sort of wrap up where we're at in the story now, tell us where this all went.
Yeah, so it was hard. Just getting day by day was so incredibly tough, but somehow managed to make it through days and then months. And he's continued with his therapy, and I've been continuing with mine. We also started couples counseling, and that's been incredibly helpful. I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay. And I didn't want to put pressure on myself to make a decision. I told myself, I'm just going to sit and watch, just see what happens, because I'm not in the mindset right now to make a permanent, lasting choice, one way or the other, like to stay or to go.
And so is that where you are right now?
That's where I've been, yes. And I would say I'm starting to come out of it. I'm starting to have more of a sense now of what I want to do, because I've been seeing the work that he's been putting in, been seeing growth in our relationship. Now I'm leaning more towards staying, but no final decisions yet.
I think you maybe told my producer also on the note of the polygraph test. What is your guys' plan for like a follow-up test?
So I'd like to do another test once it's been 6 months, and we're going to be nearing 6 months in May. So I'd like to do another test at that time, just probably similar questions, but asking about the past 6 months, if anything has happened. I highly doubt it because he hasn't had technology and he hasn't been anywhere really without me besides work, but you never know.
One thought I was having while you were telling the story, especially the part about how you're just kind of giving it some time and you're going to give him a 6-month gap before the test. Some elements of the way you're talking about your relationship strike me as if you and your husband are like 65 years old. You've been married for so many years. You just found out that he had a one-night stand. And so you're like deciding to work through it because you guys have kids and there's all this stuff. Not the situation of someone in her young 30s who doesn't have kids, who found out that this was a problem pre-engagement. I don't want this question to sound like I'm saying, what the hell? What's wrong with you? I'm more so saying it as what that tells me is that there really is a depth to your guys' love and relationship, and there really is a part of you that sees a way out of this or sees the other side of it and really sees what it could be and is praying to get there and really putting in the work to get there. And the truth is, couples do get through things like this. Can you just talk a little bit about why you feel like you and him are approaching this situation as if it's almost like you're willing to do whatever it takes versus you treating this like, I'm still young, I'm going to find someone who's not dealing with this and move on?
Yeah. I think really because of the depth of our love, like you discussed, and because we are both dedicated to healing and to each other, I think that's why I'm more inclined to stay and want to work it out. I was talking to our marriage counselor. It hasn't been easy, but he's told me if he didn't love you, he wouldn't have done the disclosure. If he wanted to continue to live this way, he wouldn't have told you because it would have been easier and it wouldn't have caused all of this damage. But he respects you enough and loves you enough to tell you that this is a problem and this has happened. And I try to remember it that way. It will never be the same as it once was, but it can be better. That's what our counselor told us. He's seen couples, not everyone, but he's seen couples get to the other side and become stronger. And I think that's what we're both kind of hoping.
Did he tell his family about this?
Yes. He told his and mine.
Oh, he told
My
your
parents,
family.
my brother, yeah.
So he sat down, your parents and brother, and read his letter?
He didn't read the letter word for word, but basically said everything that was in it, all of the important things.
Going into that conversation, did they know what he was about to say?
So with my family, a little bit, because I had talked to my mom. Of course, moms know. They know when something's wrong. And so I had kind of told her a little bit, but not everything. So I feel like they kind of had an idea, but still they were heartbroken and just kind of blindsided.
And your brother?
Yeah, he had no clue. He was very stoic.
Has everyone around you, all your friends and family, been completely aligned on the same page as you in terms of how hard you're willing to fight for this to work?
No. No. At first my mom really wanted me to leave. And I'm pretty sure my dad did too. He wouldn't tell me, but I'm pretty sure they wanted me to just leave and get a divorce and start over. I was just talking to her yesterday, actually, and she said She will support me with whatever I decide to do. She just wants me to be happy, and she wants our marriage to be good. And whether that's, together or, if we need to divorce, like she's here to support me no matter what. So she's come around a little bit.
What happens after a person who's dealing with sex addiction gets back all their devices and maybe starts having the freedoms and the ability again to go online, make purchases? How does it actually, what is the therapy doing, and how is he going to not just fall right back into it?
Well, over time, he's been working at the root cause of all of this. And he's told me before, like the goal, like this sounds weird, but like the goal is not sobriety, the goal is healing. And if you heal yourself and your trauma and your issues, then you will be sober because you won't need to do these things anymore. Like you won't get the satisfaction from them anymore. You've built new coping mechanisms and ways to work through things. I don't know yet about the technology. We haven't reintroduced the computer or his phone. Like if he's on his phone, like I'm next to him, like we'll do it together. He actually bought one of those like dumb phones that doesn't have internet. And so like I have like the parent controls. So like I can see like what he does and download the apps. And I don't want it to be this way forever. Like I'm not a controlling person and I don't want to micromanage every single thing that he does. But for now, it's the safest way to move through this.
Going back to healing the root cause, and I know you sort of alluded to some trauma from his childhood, is that in any way in relation to his parents?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when he opened up about his addiction to them, has he been working in therapy with them about their own stuff?
He hasn't been working directly with them, no. It's something that he needs to get to. I think that's actually part of like the 12 steps. Like he's also involved in like one of those 12-step groups, kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, but for sexual addicts. And so I think maybe that's one of the steps is like making amends or working through things with people who have hurt you. It's definitely high on his list to talk through with them. But I think at this point in his therapy, his counselor hasn't made that step yet. I think that's something he just has to be ready for, and then they'll begin that.
You sort of touched on it at the start, but why exactly did you write to me, and why do you want to tell this story?
I want to tell this story because when I first found out about all of this, it's the most isolating. I'm sorry, I'm going to be emotional. It's the most isolating and lonely experience that I've ever been through in my life. And I didn't feel like I had anyone who understood. Like, you have friends and you have family, but no one gets it. No one understands what you're going through unless they've been through it too. And it's such a taboo topic that I wanted to be able to share this story and just have people who may be experiencing this or, are feeling lonely if they're walking through this journey too. Just know that someone else is out there. There are other people going through this too. We're just not talking about it.
Were you able to find any support groups or other women that had been through this before?
I was actually. There's a robust online community of support. I forget what it's called. I think it's called like SA Anon or something like that, just for partners of people with sexual addictions who are going through this. And I found an in-person support group as well. But the problem is that I don't know if people are afraid to attend the in-person events, or I don't know if it's just not well known, but it was really difficult for me to actually find support groups in person.
Did you want to go in person?
I did. I think it helps just talking with someone face to face. But like, just interestingly enough, there aren't many people my age. Most of the people in the groups are older because they've probably found out, like you said, like after 20 years of marriage, 30 years of marriage. So I wish there were younger people that I could talk to and relate to. But right now it's nice just to talk with anyone.
Throughout this time, the two of you, where, you're kind of parenting him in a way and watching over him and monitoring him, is part of the therapy for you two to be intimate with one another? Or are you guys sort of on a hiatus until this is all cleared?
Yeah, we're on a hiatus. We're moving at my pace, basically. So whatever I'm ready for, I can do. I know that with therapy, they recommended like 90 days of no sex, which was fine by me because it was not going to happen. We haven't even, this is, I don't know, we haven't even kissed yet because I'm waiting for that 6 month mark. I'm like, you don't get these lips till it's been 6 months.
I was going to ask if there was any part during this process where you felt like you were actually falling out of love or you were losing physical attraction to him, like starting to not even feel the same way you used to.
Um, yes, especially in the beginning. It was really hard for me to be able to be in the same room as him, to look at him. Like, the worst part for me has been I used to feel so secure with his hugs. Like, they could cure anything. Like, give me a hug and I feel great. And it's been now where, he'll try to give me a hug to comfort me and I just feel nothing. Like, I feel so alone. And that's gotten better over time. Like, now I'm at a point where I do feel comforted, but it's taken, months to get there.
That's sad. And that I can imagine almost like an empty hug, just feeling like, who is this?
Exactly. Like, who is this person?
And just so I understand the nature of how you guys are working through this together, obviously he knows you're in therapy. He knows that you've been open with some closest friends and family. Does he know that you reached out to be on a podcast to talk about this?
He does. He encouraged it,
Oh, he
actually.
did.
I told him about it. I told him that I wanted to do it. As long as we were able to stay anonymous, he was all for it.
Wow.
So he was supportive.
Do you think you're going to play this for him?
Yeah, I asked him. I said, will you listen to it? And he said he would. So
Wow. Hi. Thanks for letting us share your story. It's interesting. It does, I don't know. It's so easy to hear the story and, as you said, which is why I'm sure you feel it's taboo and you don't want to talk about it. It's easy to hear the story and just cast a judgment and to apply it to the lens of a standard person cheating on their wife story, which we all know how we approach conversations like that. And people tend to have very little sympathy for the cheating partner. And it's just like, you're out. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. And in this case, I mean, first of all, hearing all of the therapy that goes into it and really applying the lens of a sex addiction being akin to any other illness or addiction really does change the mindset around it. And then, honestly, for me, hearing that your partner encouraged you to come on and share this, it does also make me feel a bit differently about him and what's going on for him, because it just makes you recognize that a person that makes a mistake or goes through something that's quote frowned upon in society or just something that's bad can still be a good person and is trying to not do that and has an addiction, which is like brain chemicals forcing them to do something that they don't want to do either.
yeah. And I mean, he takes full ownership for what he did. Like, he understands that, yes, it is an addiction, but he still made the choices to do those things and to act out in those ways. That's helped me to kind of like process it. Like, he at least, he takes ownership.
Going into a long-term relationship with someone that deals with addiction in this way, obviously you can get to the 6-month mark, you could pass another polygraph test, and then you can be generally, I guess I'll use the phrase, on the wagon for years and years and years. And how do you cope with the uncertainty of the long-term future? Is there a little voice on your shoulder telling you this could be an issue for the next 60 years?
Mm-hmm. It's so hard. Like, that is my biggest struggle right now, with knowing what to do and, thinking about the future, wanting to make decisions, but it's the fear of the unknown. Like, could something happen to trigger him, taking a step backward? That's probably been the biggest thing that I've discussed with him just together and in therapy, is just that fear. Time helps. Like, seeing time pass, hearing other people's success stories. Like, there are people that have made it 20 years, 30 years, they're on the other side of it. And then also just hearing from his perspective how desperate he is to not go back there. It, in his words, was destroying him and destroying his life. And he had reached his rock bottom. And anytime I bring it up, he's like, I can't backslide. That's not an option for me anymore. Like, that is just not happening. And it's hard for me to believe sometimes because all of this has happened, but I just take it day by day. That's all I can do is take it day by day.
Definitely. Will you write to us and let us know how the polygraph test goes?
I will.
Okay, we'll share it with people. When you tell this story, are you fearful of how I'm perceiving you? Are you fearful of how the audience is perceiving you? Like, what's going on there?
I am a little bit. You worry about judgment. And, like, if this were happening to anyone else, I'd be like, yeah, leave. Like, what are you doing? But I don't know.
Would you? Is that really your,
I
like,
don't
you would
know.
maybe tell someone else that?
I feel like it's just society that, like, ingrains that in us. Like, you catch a whiff of anything bad and, like, you're out the door. Like, kick that person to the curb. Like,
I mean, there is such a culture these days about red flags, and you see it all over social media. But I mean, there's videos of husbands and wives or boyfriends and girlfriends, and the boy gives the girl a weird look, and people are like putting red flag emojis all over the comments, and it's like this movement towards getting rid of anyone who has any red flag qualities. And then, of course, in your case, there's this huge, you could call it a red flag or you could call it an addiction.
yeah.
It makes you realize how when a situation is happening to you and it hits so close to home, that's when you see the multi-layers versus if a friend came to you and you just knew a little bit about their relationship, how you would maybe probably tell them to get out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, no one knows what happens between the two of us except for us. So I guess even if someone were to judge us or think poorly of us, like, I know at least where my heart is. Like, you can't know what's happening with another person, even if they're your spouse. Like, you just don't have access to that. If you feel good with the choices that you make at the end of the day, you've done the right thing for you, then that's what matters, I think. Yes.
Okay, we'll share it with people. What advice, just parting words of wisdom, if someone is facing a similar situation and maybe dealing with it silently and doesn't have people in their life that they're comfortable going to, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, first of all, I know it feels isolating, but you're not alone. There are other people going through the exact same thing that you are. I'd say it's okay to not make a decision. It's okay to just be and heal yourself before you make any decisions about your future. And then I would just encourage them, find a way to get connected and reach out. Like I said, there are online groups that they meet every hour on the hour. Like, you can find people and they will talk with you. So there are supports out there. It's sometimes you just have to dig a little bit.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And we're all rooting for you and whatever decision you end up making and whatever the results are of this test. I speak for everyone in the audience when we say that we just want you to be happy and to be able to be at peace.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Real Stuff podcast. If you're liking the show, please head over to Apple or Spotify and leave the show a written review. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment down below and join in the conversation. And if you're feeling called to be a guest on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your attention with us, and we will see you next time on the Real Stuff podcast.
Please note that this episode may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products and services. Individuals on the show may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to in this episode.